me, fallen god. None defy what the fates decree.
I will show you the way to the Sisters of Fate.
You seek the Sisters to kill Zeus?
Zeus, Olympus, and the blade which holds all your power will forevermore be out of reach.
You no longer possess the powers of a god, Kratos.
The fates have not deemed victory for you.
Behold the island of creation, home to the Sisters of Fate. It was created to prevent all from reaching the three sisters.
Only death awaits you at the end of your journey.
My death is what began this journey.
Hidden deep within the spire lie the sisters. They control the threads of fate. Gain control of your thread, and you will be able to return to the moment when Zeus betrayed you.
Your soul will never find peace for what you have become.
The destroyer of worlds. I am what the gods have made me.
The youngest and boldest captain in the Spartan army, Kratos inspired fierce loyalty in his men.
How much is enough, Kratos? When will it end?
When the glory of Sparta is known throughout the world.
His desire for conquest knew no bounds, but that which he desired would ultimately consume him. That desperate call for aid
Ares, destroy my enemies!
would come to haunt Kratos for all his days.
Welcome back to more Let's Play God of War 2. Absolutely no hesitation. We start this episode with a QTE from a surprise boss encounter. Make sure you do the QTE correctly or you will die. And if you die, you won't be able to actually get to the main boss itself. So here we go. QTE is done. Let's get to the cutscene and then to the boss itself.
It is true. I have fought my way through the guardians of Hades and crawled my way out of the fires of torment to change my fate. And for my efforts, the sisters shine their light upon me, delivering the very object of my vengeance, Kratos. The servant of Ares. Do you remember that day, Spartan?
I will never forget that day.
This time, Ghost of Sparta, I will have your head.
Welcome to the Barbarian King boss fight. It is Ulfric, as he is named in the God of War 2 novelization and in the God of War 2010 comic book series that we covered in the interlude video from before. Alright, Barbarian King, Phase 1. He is on his horse. You are not aiming to attack the Barbarian King himself, you are aiming to attack his horse. You want to kind of position yourself in front of the horse to prevent Ulfric from charging his horse around and putting distance in front of you. If he puts distance in front of you, then he's going to start, pelting you with arrows, or his horse is going to charge around. It's going to be very, very annoying to deal with. So you want to kind of position Kratos close or in front of the horse to force, the war horse and Ulfric to do what they're doing right now, repeatedly, ad nauseum, until the phase is over. If you can get yourself in a position where you can, keep the Barbarian King stuck at doing what you're seeing on screen right now, then this phase is going to be very, very fast, very, very quick. You just keep doing this until all the spirits just kind of fly away, and then you damage them a little bit more, and then the phase will essentially be over. So, very, very simple, but you have to position Kratos in such a way where the Barbarian King isn't going to be able to create distance between himself and you. And then the phase is over, you kill the horse, and it's time to fight not the Barbarian King himself. And this is something that I didn't actually understand myself for many, many, many times playing God of War 2. But the first two phases, you're not actually fighting the Barbarian King himself. The first phase, you fight the horse. The second phase, he makes the arena smaller, and he unleashes these spirits of barbarian soldiers from the past. For this phase, you don't actually want to focus on attacking Ulrich, the big Barbarian King. You want to focus on attacking all the spirits. Attacking the spirits, from what I understand, is what ends phase 2, not attacking Ulrich himself. If you attack Ulrich, the phase is never going to end, from my understanding. But if you attack the actual barbarian spirits that Ulrich unleashes, you will be moving towards the end of the phase. I speed up here because I didn't understand when I was playing that. My goal wasn't to attack Ulrich, but it was to attack the spirits. And I was just kind of blocking to see if I can get an opening to attack Ulrich. But Ulrich should not be your target. The Barbarian King should not be your target for this phase. Your target should always be the spirits that he unleashes. And the hint should come from when you try to attack Ulrich, you don't actually gain any, your combo doesn't go up in attacking Ulrich. It only goes up when you attack the spirits. Anyway, the spirits themselves, they can do basic attacks. Everything is blockable. The spirits can sometimes grab you, do a QTE, and automatically kills them if you get the QTE done right. You can knock Ulrich back a little bit. Ulrich has 2 basic attacks. If he's close enough, he swings at you with his big barbarian hammer. And if he's far away from you, he does a shockwave attack. Don't let him get far away from you, because that shockwave attack, from what I understand, is not blockable. Definitely not later on, but I'm pretty sure even now at this point, that attack is not actually blockable.
No! Not you again!
Blast from the past, it is the boat captain from God of War 1. Although the shockwave is blockable. In this phase, it's blockable anyway. In the final phase of the fight, that shockwave attack will no longer be blockable, and we'll talk about that. But now we move on to phase 3 of the battle. The spirits infuse themselves into Ulrich, and he becomes a giant barbarian king. Now you actually start attacking Ulrich himself. For phase 3, make sure you use Rage of the Titans completely. Ulrich has really, really difficult to dodge attacks, so my suggestion is don't even try to dodge them. Just go in and do as much damage as possible to Ulrich with Rage of the Titans. You take reduced damage when you're under Rage of the Titans, and if you're still stuck in phase 3 after the Rage of the Titans runs out, you shouldn't, but if you were like me, then you can just use a little bit of magic to end the phase faster. When the spirits fly out of Ulrich and he goes back to normal size, you're in phase 4, the final phase of the fight. In this final phase, Ulrich has 3 attacks, two of which you'll actually see, one of which you won't, because you shouldn't if you're playing this in Titan mode. He's either going to swing the Barbarian Hammer, as he's doing right now, or he's going to absorb all of these spirits of the fallen soldiers and shoot them out at you like missiles. If he's going to shoot these spirits out at you, that is an unblockable attack, and you have to dodge roll out of the way. So my suggestion is get close to Ulrich, dodge roll backwards, and then dodge roll towards him as he shoots the missiles, and the missiles should fly harmlessly over you. That's what you do. So he's doing it, roll backwards, roll forwards, and you should be able to dodge the spirits that he throws at you. He has one more attack where he does the shockwave thing from phase 2, but in phase 4 that attack is definitely unblockable, and you don't want him to ever do that, so stay close to him to force him to do swings or to shoot his the spirits like missiles. If you do that, then phase 4 should go by pretty quickly, and you will finish the Barbarian King fight relatively painlessly. It's not as difficult as Theseus. It is more technical because there are a lot of steps to it. It has 4 whole phases as opposed to Theseus's 3, or as opposed to previous bosses is like 1 or 2 phases. Barbarian King has 4 full phases that all operate a little bit differently, so you have to be aware of the technicalities of every single phase. But if you understand them, then the battle itself is pretty painless, pretty straightforward. It's not the worst thing. It's not a Theseus. We're not at Theseus 2.0 or something crazy like that. For beating the Barbarian King, we get the Barbarian Hammer. We get to test it out with these barbarian soldiers, these undead barbarian soldiers, and that's it. So, beating the Barbarian King, we get the Barbarian Hammer. I hope you enjoyed seeing it, because that's going to be one of the few times I ever actually use it. It's not useless compared to, say, the Blade of Artemis in the original God of War, which I never used, as you may recall from that Let's Play. But I don't use it. I barely use it. I barely use the hammer in God of War 2. alternate weapons for me don't get super good and super useful until God of War 3. Again, I think God of War 3 has the best combat, and part of that comes with just how viable and useful the weapons are in that game. One in particular, obviously, but they're all pretty good. So I've been going on and on about the Barbarian King. Well, now we get to kind of take a step back and cool things off a little bit. And we can talk about God of War 2's first detour, as it were. I hesitate to really call them detours. Obviously, there's a story reason for why we go to every place that we go to in this game, but clearly, this game would have been a lot shorter if we cut off this this detour that Ulrich forced us on. Because then we wouldn't have had to get stuck in the Bog of the Forgotten and do this whole side area before we make it all the way back to Destiny's Atrium. Because, spoiler alert, this whole section, all we're doing is getting back to Destiny's Atrium. And once we get back to Destiny's Atrium, we will literally be in the place that we were before Ulrich ambushed us, except we're going to go in a different direction. And by going in a different direction, we will be back on the main path to actually get to the Sisters of Fate. This whole thing is just a big side area, a big side distraction to extend the length of the game and diversify the environments of the game. But I think we have a cutscene.
You, warrior, help me! Help me!
Yeah, definitely a cutscene. It introduces our big side quest objective for this part of the game. Anyway, as I was saying, the Bog of the Forgotten exists to extend the playtime of God of War 2, fulfill the promise of making it longer than God of War 1, and to diversify the environments, because we've been looking at the regular Island of Creation stuff for a little while now, so it's about time we change things up now with this green and brown bog area that we're going to be hanging out at for quite a bit, because this episode's like 40 minutes, and then the next episode is part 2 of all this, which is going to be, a further, I think, close to 40 minutes as well. We have new enemies here. These are, I forget what these things are called, but they're little pig people. They're just little pig people. You can just grab them multiple times and that kills them. They're they can be kind of annoying if you let them just attack you, because they have an unblockable attack that they mix in with their regular blockable attacks. The unblockable strike doesn't actually do any damage, but it does stun Kratos and break his block and leave him open for further attacks from the same little piggy or from its helper piggies. So they're definitely not pigs because they have horns, but that's the only thing I can think to call them. So that's what I shall. Regardless, detours, God of War 2, I overall enjoy them. Like I said, God of War 2 is very successful at diversifying its environments, just when players may potentially begin to get bored of looking at one thing. So I think it was a good idea to force players down this side path. I kind of wish it wasn't a side path, and that the Bog of the Forgotten was more naturally, incorporated into the Island of Creation itself, and not just the thing that Kratos gets dragged to and then he has to claw out of to get back to the main path. But in terms of how it actually looks, what you're actually doing here, it's pretty good. It's a little long, but it's not overly long. It's not Pandora's Temple. It's just a decent little area that kind of a little bit overstays its welcome, but not by much, not by that long. And part of the reason it's going to overstay its welcome is because some of the super secret hidden chests in this area require you to backtrack through the entire area a second time, which we'll get to, I believe, in the beginning of the next video. So we don't need to worry about it right now, but just know that there are some super secret chests, and they kind of overstay the welcome because It requires you to do a backtrack of the entire area. I should mention, with the Barbarian Hammer, I'm pretty sure Kratos cannot dodge roll when he's using the Barbarian Hammer, when he's blocking with it, as compared to the Blades of Athena. So that's a disadvantage for the Barbarian Hammer, because you want to be able to move around and reposition yourself, and you can't really do that with the Barbarian Hammer, but you can with the Blades of Athena. So there's a legitimate reason why I wouldn't use the hammer all that often. Skeletons, they're annoying because they're just kind of fast, a little too fast for what they look like. But here, by the way, I'm just going to get to refill my health. Remember to never use a health or a magic chest if you're full up, because you never know when you're going to need them. Later. Anyway, skeletons are kind of annoying, but they have very, very little health, so it makes up for the fact that they're kind of annoying and kind of fast because they have so little health. So that's something. We've also upgraded our Blades of Athena to level 3. And I believe now that our blades are at level 3, I think we're going to shift focus to different things to upgrade, at least for a little bit. Here we have another eye, the second in our final set. That's pretty cool. We're about to come up against a brand new enemy type and a brand new collectible that I'm not going to be collecting in the main playthrough, and I'm going to explain why once we actually get to see it. But first, welcome to the ruins of the Forgotten. Here is a Berserker Rider, the little piggy with the horns, but this one is going to call upon a giant Cyclops Berserker, a Berserker Cyclops. You can tell these are different from the other ones because these ones wield massive wooden clubs, whereas the other ones were completely unarmed. These are more annoying, but dealing with the Cyclops Berserkers when it's being mounted by a rider is very simple, because all you have to do is press circle once. You get into a very simple QTE, and then you just dispatch of the Berserker rider just the way you would any normal version of that enemy. The Cyclops itself is a little bit difficult. It does a lot of damage, obviously, as you can imagine. Its main thing, if you keep your distance, is that it's going to charge at you and do a little kick, as you can see right there. Do a little kick, and then it's going to slam down on the ground with its unarmed bare hand there, which gives you an opening to do some basic attacks for a few seconds there. So a little kick, and just slam down on the ground. Just keep your distance, do some basic attacks. Very, very simple. The important thing to note about the Berserker Cyclops is their QTE. So we'll eventually wear this thing down enough to do the QTE, and you'll see that there is a special thing attached to the QTE of this particular enemy. Specifically, we're going to be getting a new type of collectible that is tied to an unlockable costume for bonus play. As I mentioned before, however, we're not going to be worried about collecting the eyes in the main story, mostly because if you play through the main story normally and don't, expose any glitches or programming or anything, then there are not 20 Cyclops Berserkers in God of War 2, at least not normally. There's a pretty easy way to exploit that and to make 20 Cyclops Berserkers spawn in, but in the highest difficulty playthrough, you don't want to collect your Cyclops eyes in the main story. If you're going to collect Cyclops eyes, I would recommend you can start with a few in the main story, and I think by a few there's like 3 or 4 that you can definitely get before the story's over, and if you don't exploit one particular fight that's coming up in a much later episode. But there is going to be 2 opportunities in the extras that we will cover in the extras video, where you'll be able to farm for all these Cyclops eyes that you need in order to get the 20 that you need to unlock a costume. And we can talk about what costume that is in the extras video. But for now, for this first fight, you can get 2 of them right off the bat, if you wanted to, just to start things off. Alright, the Berserkers are beaten, that battle is done, my health is topped off, my magic is almost topped off, so I figured not worth it to waste the chest in case I need it later. moving this thing into a position that's going to make it easier for something later, because this whole area is like a big circle. We're going to make our way back around to this point in like, 15 minutes, I would say. 10, 15 minutes, I would say. Yeah, about 10, 15 minutes. Sneaky little chest here. You got to use your Chronos Rage to break the block that's up here. And you get a nice blank chest. Even though it fell down, it was very clearly a red orb chest as it was falling for those few frames. And you can go back and review those frames yourself. But then it transformed into a blank item chest. That's kind of weird, but kind of fun, I guess. Moving on, we have two paths. The path on the left is a side area. It just leads to... It's purely a side area. You don't have two options for paths here. God of War 2, as compared to God of War 1's wide linearity, God of War 2 abandons that for the most part and focuses in on a tighter, more linear experience that all the following God of War games are going to take to heart and also adopt as well. God of War 1 being the only title that used the wide linear format that we were discussing at length in that title. So that's nice. But yeah, going down this path, all it gets you is just some extra red orbs. And magic for your trouble, which is fine. We can take that. We take those. Moving on, though, this is the actual path that we're going to take. We have some more Firefly bombs here, and we have some more raids. This is a pretty simple fight. The raids are not that much trouble, as we discussed before in a previous video. And the Firefly bombs, compared to those black flies that we fought when we had knocked the head of Lachesis' statue out of the temple of Lachesis, these bomb flies are nowhere near as annoying as those black flies that spew the green stuff at you and shoot the webs that can potentially stun you. The red ones aren't anywhere near as annoying. So that is a good thing, I would say. And the raids by themselves are fine. They're just as they were in God of War 1. It's not difficult at all to deal with. Now that we have a quiet moment before we're introduced to some new enemies in a few minutes, I wanted to talk about the God of War 2 novelization some more. I mentioned it before, but I didn't talk about really why I loved it so much more than the God of War 1 novelization. The God of War 1 novelization was fine, but it changed a lot of things up from the game. And, when I read a novelization of a game, I'm not looking for a one-to-one recreation of the game. What I'm mainly looking for is what God of War 2 ends up doing with its novelization, which is expansion and clarification on things. And God of War 2 novelization does that, whereas God of War 1 actually actively changed some stuff. The God of War 2 novelization focuses in on expanding things or clarifying things and operating with the benefit of hindsight. The God of War 2 novelization came out in 2011, which was after the release of God of War 3. So the writing team, which I believe is the exact same team that worked on the God of War 1 novelization, was able to retell the story of God of War 2 with the hindsight of already knowing what the story of God of War 3 was, which is a very interesting way to tell the story of God of War 2, because clearly, as good as God of War 2 is, they weren't telling the story with the intent of... They weren't telling the story knowing what God of War 3 was going to be. They had very different ideas for what God of War 3 was going to be, if any ideas at all at this point. So getting to retell the God of War 2 story, knowing what God of War 3 was going to be, was very interesting, and it changes a few things in really interesting ways. The main thing that it does that I really, really like is all of the interludes with the Sisters of Fate, but we'll get back to that in a second, because we're introduced to some new enemies. These are new types of ranged foes. They also have swords for up-close combat, but for all intents and purposes, these are ranged enemies. You cannot block their projectiles, from what I understand. I think you can only parry them back, which makes them kind of difficult to deal with. They don't do that much damage, but they're pretty annoying to deal with from a distance. Once you get close to them, it's just a matter of grabbing them multiple times or doing some basic attacks, and they go down really, really quick. They don't have that much health, not compared to other things that I would find very annoying. And on their own, they're very easy to deal with. So getting back to the novelization, the thing that I really like about it is just how it splits up the story the narrative into three stories. The Kratos story, which pretty faithfully retells what's happening in the game, with expansion. Like for example, when we meet Theseus, for example, we really go into the backstory of why Theseus is there, his myth, his stories, why he would want to seek out the Sisters of Fate, the things that he's trying to get out of it. So it's basically the story of God of War 2, but it's more expanded with additional details that are really interesting for the other characters that are around Kratos or that take on Kratos at some point. It's also got the story of the Olympian gods. Specifically, it starts off with a focus on Zeus and what he's up to, but then shifts focus into Athena, once Kratos reaches the island of creation. We find out some interesting stuff. Athena's playing detective, trying to find out why Zeus is doing the things that he's doing, and why the other gods are acting the way they are. Again, God of War 2 novelization was written post God of War 3, so it was written with the hindsight of knowing what God of War 3 was as a story. So it's really interesting to have Athena play detective and get close to discovering exactly what's going on with all the gods on Olympus and why they're acting like even bigger D-bags than they were in than they are in actual myths, or in the original God of War for that matter, or in the earlier God of War titles like Chains of Olympus and Ascension. They've always been jerks, but with the exception of Ares, they've mostly been, as you'd expect, Ares being the outlier as the insane God of War that has kind of lost his mind and wants to conquer Olympus. Ares being that one exception, the other gods act as you would expect them to based on their stories, at least until we get into God of War 2 and God of War 3, where the gods are going to be acting, supremely vile, and Athena plays detective to try to understand why that's happening, and gets really close to the truth that we're going to discover in God of War 3. But the most interesting part, I think, is the whole thing with the Sisters of Fate. The Sisters of Fate have their own story that's played out in the God of War 2 novelization. And it's really, really interesting because we find out why they act the way they do. Why... Sorry, I got distracted by the cutscene there. We get to find out why they're acting the way that they do, and why they make mistakes and act in a way that doesn't really make sense for the arbiters of fate. Why they're acting so conceited and so prideful and so evil in this game. But we'll get back to that later because I should probably explain what this whole combat section is. This whole combat section, we are controlling the platform here. It's very annoying to do because the enemies constantly spawn in like every few seconds. We're about to see a timer come up on screen to demonstrate just how many seconds you really have to make progress in pushing the pulling the lever to push the platform closer to your ultimate destination, and it's not that long. You really don't have that much time at all before two of these unarmored enemies, and thank God they're unarmored, but two of these unarmored enemies come up. Here's the respawn timer. I think you get a grand total of 5 seconds before two more enemies pop in. It's not a lot of time to make a lot of progress. It's really annoying. I had to speed it up because this takes forever to do. Both the platforms that we have to push, and you have to get pretty close. I had a practice playthrough where I thought I was close enough, but I missed by just a few inches and had to do the entire thing over again with no checkpoint in the middle. It's very annoying. I'm not a fan of that at all. I also want to point out that we saw an Argonaut from Jason and the Argonauts fighting a bunch of undead soldiers in the earlier cutscene that I got distracted in. I want to point out that soldier was wearing that soldier was clearly using a Spartan shield, which I think maybe it's just a reused asset and not like something that's intended. I'm not sure, but that's what you saw. You saw someone with a Spartan shield, even though the majority of the Spartan army has been broken and destroyed by Zeus at this point. That was clearly someone who appeared to be like a Spartan soldier that was fighting some undead soldiers there, but is part of Jason's crew. But whatever. This is the Rock Minotaur. The Rock Minotaur is annoying because of just how much health they have. They can't really do much. It has 2 attacks. It does that spin thing. It can do that ground slam thing where it slams the ground like 6 times. Basically just getting close, attack, roll away, repeat the process ad nauseum until it dies. In Titan mode, it takes a while for it to die because things have a lot of health in Titan mode, and you don't do a lot of damage in Titan mode, so expect that to happen a lot, unfortunately. But regardless, that mini boss fight is also done with. And now we get to continue forward, and I get to keep talking about the God of War 2 novelization and why I like it so much. So the Sisters of Fate, we get to find out why they act the way they do in this game. So conceited, so evil, so bleh overall. And the reason is because they are being affected by the same thing that we're going to find out is affecting the gods in God of War 3, which is really, really interesting. That the Sisters of Fate were affected just as heavily as the Greek gods were to the thing that we're going to find out they've been affected by in God of War 3. I'll talk about it more in God of War 3, obviously, but it's really, really interesting to find out that God of War 2 written retold with the hindsight of what God of War 3 is, changes some things for the better, for the more interesting, I think. So that's nice. At this point, though, getting back to what's going on screen, we're about to open up this little door here. We have a statue of the Sisters of Fate. We can slow down time here. I believe I'm going to die here, actually, because this is a deceptively tricky jump to make, and I did not make it. Oops. Overall, though, I talked about this before, but this was a really good playthrough of God of War 2, in my opinion, that I did. I didn't die nearly as much, and most of the times that I did were mostly environmental things. There's going to be a few fights, of course, where I die plenty of times to BS from enemies, but for the most part, a lot of my deaths come from environmental stuff, which I was very surprised that it wasn't, that I didn't have nearly as hard a time with God of War 2 as I worried I was going to. This little conveyor belt section was, not that bad. There are a whole bunch of statues that release the stare of the Gorgon at you. Just roll when it's not doing that. Attack the enemies. Similar to the conveyor belt section, the enemies here are unlimited. They drop in every now and again. Because the enemies here are unlimited, just like in the conveyor belt platform section, you need to be aware of the fact that you cannot farm for infinite red orbs here. Not really. And in fact, after a certain amount of enemies are killed, they will stop spawning red orb. They will stop releasing red orbs upon death. All I'm doing right now is just killing some enemies to get to the point where their deaths are no longer going to generate me red orbs, and once I reach that point, I'm going to stop attacking them and move on. Just, to maximize the amount of red orbs that I could possibly get from this section. But now that I see that no more red orbs are being flown my way, even though I've clearly killed some enemies since then, I've gone ahead and just left the area, because I wasn't going to stick around forever and not get anything for doing that. Now we're going to go ahead and push this thing off, and we're back. We've made our big circle. We're back at the beginning of the Ruins of the Forgotten, and now we can actually move forward to rescue the guy that got dragged away by the Minotaurs towards the start of the video after defeating the Barbarian King. We use both those things to push those off to the edge, and then we're going to make ourselves a new platform right now in this cutscene. So there we go. Brand new platform. Hooray! Now it's time to go into that cave that the guy got dragged off into. I don't have high hopes. I'm pretty sure that guy is definitely super duper dead, but, you know, we'll see. We'll see. Running on in now, we have that wheel. That doesn't really matter to us right now.
God of War. Jason. That beast took him. All our men are dead. Jason has the fleece. You must save him. The fleece is the key to Medusa's temple.
All right. We have our task. Jason of the Argonauts is, in fact, here. Being munched on by that big Cerberus creature. Hooray! We get to deal with another one. Ah, but the previous ones we dealt with weren't that bad, so this one surely must be fine as well, right? Haha. No. This one that we're going to be going up against is very annoying, but first we have a Gorgon. Gorgons are easy to deal with on their own. Just launch them up in the air. This is actually a time where you can go ahead and do that classic launch enemies up into the air and then attack them repeatedly while they're up in the air to that classic strategy from previous God of War titles, namely Chains of Olympus and the original God of War. But let's see, we have this thing that looks similar to the thing from Destiny's Atrium, but it's not spewing fireballs. We have the Cerberus munching on poor Jason over there. We have a conveyor belt, that's interesting, with a big spinning wheel. And we have these two chests. We'll go ahead and open these chests up, and then we will solve the obvious puzzle of this room and move on to the final encounter of this video. So the obvious puzzle, of course, is we have to jam up that wheel to make it destructible. And that means this guy. This guy needs to be fed to that wheel because, you know, I mean, the rest of this guy's crew is dead anyway. Jason's dead. Who cares?
No. What are you doing? I need your help.
Certainly not the fallen God of War. So here we go. You have an opportunity to get max health or max magic before this fight. We have a brief cutscene, and then we will get into it. Okay, so I think the Mole Cerberus is technically classified as a mini-boss, but whatever. This is a boss, for all intents and purposes. I classify it as a boss. It has so much health in Titan mode. It is so relentless in Titan mode. It does so much damage in Titan mode. I don't like the Mole Cerberus. It is bleh. It is an awful fight. Basically, you need to block most everything. Nothing is unblockable. The fireballs break your block, so you want to dodge. You want to dodge away from those. But if you have to end up blocking one of those, then don't worry about it. It's not going to do damage to you. It's going to kind of stun Kratos, but it's not. The fireballs aren't going to do damage to him. Basically, the name of the game is just block the entire time and wait for the Mole Cerberus to give you some kind of opening. Normally, after fireball attacks are nice. In the beginning of the fight, at the beginning of the fight, while you still have magic, anytime it does the fireball attack, go ahead and just hurl some Typhon's Bane arrows at it while it does its fireball attack. When it does its flamethrower attack, you usually have an opening of a few seconds to do a few attacks. When it does its paw strike, you normally don't really have an opening to do attacks because it follows up that paw strike. It follows up with attacks after the paw strike really, really quick normally. So you're not really going to have an opportunity to do anything about it once it starts doing paw strike. When the Mole Cerberus swallows the golden fleece from Jason's severed arm, you are in the second half of the fight. Second half of the fight is exactly the same as the first. It has a brand new attack, one brand new attack, where its pause web can sometimes slam the ground and produce a little shockwave. The shockwave doesn't actually hurt you at all. It doesn't stun you. It's not unblockable. It's just a regular pause strike that happens to have a little extra shockwave added to it for flair, I guess. The Mole Cerberus is very annoying. I've sped this up, and it's still going to take like a minute to beat it because it is just so damage spongy, and you do so little damage in this difficulty, and it does so much damage itself if it manages to hit you that it's really, really scary to get hit by it. You don't want to waste your Rage of the Titans here because Kratos can't block while he's doing that, and you don't want to take unnecessary damage. You want to play this safe and slow. You want to block everything. You want to wait for opportunities to attack, not after a pause strike, but after a flamethrower or after some fireballs. You can go ahead and lay in some attacks to try and get this thing down. But it's going to take a while. Expect this to take a while in Titan mode. Mole Cerberus, not necessarily difficult. The strategy is not necessarily difficult, but it is such a long fight. There are going to be plenty of opportunities where you're going to mess up and potentially die. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you all for part 2 of this Bog of the Forgotten 2-parter.